A quiet breeze rustled the trees lining the city park's cobblestone path when chaos cracked the silence. It happened in an instant. A booted leg swung hard toward a golden retriever seated beside a girl on a mobility scooter. The strike landed with a dull thud against the dog's ribs, drawing a sharp gasp from nearby joggers and a chorus of shocked murmurs from picnic-goers on the grass. 12-year-old Emma Reyes jolted, nearly spilling her smoothie. Her hand trembled as she reached toward her dog, Toby, whose soft brown eyes squinted in pain. Toby wore a bright red harness labeled Medical Assistance, Please Don't Touch. He had been quietly resting against Emma's scooter, as he always did during their morning outings. Now he stumbled back, ears pinned and body taut, emitting a low growl, a sound that came not from anger, but protective instinct. His training held firm. He didn't retaliate. He simply positioned himself between Emma and the man who'd attacked. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She leaned forward, trying to reach for Toby, her voice faltering. The man who had kicked him took a step back, then laughed, loud and mocking. His name, stitched crudely onto a black denim vest, read Griff Weller. He wore biker gloves, mirrored sunglasses, and a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "What?" he said, raising his arms theatrically. "I barely touched him. Didn't even knock her little wheels over." Nearby, a mom with a stroller stopped in horror. A boy on a skateboard froze mid-push. A man feeding pigeons dropped his bag of crumbs. The park, moments ago a bubble of mundane peace, had turned tense and brittle. Emma's service dog had done nothing wrong, just like Emma hadn't asked to be the girl in the scooter. The accident that injured her spine was months behind her, but moments like this reminded her how exposed she was. A volunteer from the park's animal therapy station, a woman in a blue vest with curly black hair, rushed toward the commotion. "Sir, you can't do that," she shouted, positioning herself protectively in front of Emma. Griff tilted his head, unimpressed, just testing if it was a real helper dog or one of those fake vests people buy online. The crowd's murmurs turned louder. Phones were lifted. Someone was filming. Toby let out a whimper, and Emma, cheeks burning, leaned down to hug his neck, whispering shakily, "It's okay. It's okay, boy." But it wasn't okay. And deep down, Emma knew this wouldn't be the last time someone tried to test how much she could take. "Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing?" The voice sliced through the park like a blade. Aunt Celia stormed down the gravel path, her canvas tote bag swinging wildly from one shoulder, the other arm outstretched like a mother lion defending her cub. She was in her 40s, short hair dyed copper, sandals barely clinging to her feet as she rushed to Emma's side. Emma had never seen her aunt's face look like that. So pale, yet burning with fury. Celia dropped to one knee beside the scooter and wrapped an arm around Emma, checking Toby's side with gentle hands. "Did he kick you too?" she whispered to her niece. Emma shook her head, too stunned to speak. Griff Weller gave an exaggerated shrug, clearly unimpressed. "Oh, come on. I didn't even hit her. Just gave the mutt a little test." "A test?" Celia stood up slowly, squaring her shoulders. "He's a registered medical assistance dog. You assaulted him in front of a child." Several people had gathered now. A jogger called out, "Already called the cops." A teenager with a phone muttered, "Streaming this." "You're toast, dude." Griff's two biker buddies had begun to shift nervously by a water fountain, arms crossed, eyes flicking toward the path leading out of the park. One of them muttered something about, "Not worth it." Griff ignored them. "Y'all are so dramatic," he sneered, jabbing a finger toward Emma. "You're raising kids too soft. Back in my day, dogs stayed in the yard and didn't wear badges." Celia's hands curled into fists, but her voice stayed cool. Back in your day? You mean before people grew a conscience? Toby whimpered again. Emma bent forward and placed her hands on his neck, whispering, "Stay. Stay with me." Her fingers traced the edge of his harness, where a fresh scuff now marred the bright red fabric. Someone shouted from the parking lot, "Police just pulled in." That made Griff pause. His grin faltered for just a second, and his jaw tensed. One of his buddies grabbed his shoulder and said low, "We should bounce." Griff gave Emma one last long stare, smug, but laced with something else. Regret, guilt, number. It was a challenge. Then he turned, muttering curses under his breath as he stomped back toward the motorcycles. Celia exhaled shakily, pulling Emma into a fierce side hug. "You're okay. He's okay. That's what matters now." But Emma didn't answer. Her eyes stayed locked on the path where Griff had walked away. Because somehow, she knew it wasn't over. 2 hours later, Emma sat on the small porch of her aunt's townhouse, the memory of Griff's boot still echoing in her chest. It wasn't the pain. It was the way the world had frozen, the way strangers looked on, unsure whether to help, the way Toby had let out that yelp and yet stayed calm, still doing his job. Toby now rested at her feet, his head tucked under one paw, golden fur rising and falling gently. Celia had called the police station as soon as they got home. An officer had promised to follow up, but Emma could hear in her aunt's tone, no one expected anything fast. The porch overlooked a narrow street in a quiet suburb of Raleigh. Wind rustled the hedges. A bike bell rang faintly a few houses down. It should have been a normal evening. It wasn't. Celia stepped out with 2 mugs of cocoa, handing one to Emma. She lowered herself onto the wooden bench, her body still stiff from tension. "I keep replaying it in my head," she admitted. "I should have gotten there faster." Emma shook her head. "You came. That's what matters." They sat in silence for a moment. Toby shifted, letting out a soft groan, then settled again. "I checked for bruising," Celia said. "He seems okay physically." "Yeah," Emma said softly, "but he looked scared, and Toby's never scared." Her fingers moved over the dog's ears gently. Celia hesitated. "You've never told me. How did you two meet?" Emma looked up, surprised. "You were there. You picked me up from the rehab center that day." "Right. But I mean, the first moment." Emma took a deep breath. "It was during one of those awful sessions. I couldn't even move my legs an inch. They said I was too tense. I felt useless, angry. I didn't want to talk to anyone." She smiled faintly. "Then the trainer wheeled in this dog. He just looked at me, like I wasn't broken, just tired." Toby lifted his head as if sensing he was being talked about. Emma laughed softly. "I didn't even want to pet him, but he just rested his chin on my knee, and I started crying, like ugly crying, and he didn't move." Celia's eyes glistened. "He picked you." "Yeah. Or maybe I picked him." Emma rubbed her thumb along Toby's collar. "He saved me, you know. Even when my legs wouldn't work, I still had someone who didn't care about that." From the porch, the evening light cast long shadows across the sidewalk. But inside Emma's heart, something warm and steady pulsed. The memory of connection. Even if the world didn't always see her worth, Toby always did. That night, the walls felt thinner. Every creak of the floor, every branch tapping the window sent a ripple through Emma's nerves. She lay in bed beneath her patchwork quilt, Toby curled in a protective ball at her side. Normally, his soft breathing was enough to lull her to sleep. Tonight, it only reminded her how close she had come to losing him. Outside, the wind picked up. Leaves scraped across the sidewalk like whispers of things unspoken. Celia had gone to bed early. exhausted from the emotional aftermath. But Emma couldn't close her eyes. Not with the image of Griff Weller's twisted grin burned into her mind. What if he came back? She turned to her side, reaching for her tablet. For half an hour, she scrolled through animal videos, hoping to distract herself. Instead, she ended up watching service dog footage, videos of dogs helping veterans stand, calming children during meltdowns, guiding blind owners across streets. One clip featured a golden retriever, almost identical to Toby, assisting a boy with cerebral palsy into a school bus. Emma swallowed a lump in her throat. They don't understand, she thought. People like Griff don't see service dogs. They see targets. Toby stirred beside her, as if sensing her thoughts. His head lifted, ears perked. Emma whispered, "It's okay. We're safe." She wasn't sure she believed it. A sudden sound broke through the stillness. A faint engine, slow and steady, passing outside. Emma froze. Was it just a neighbor's car? Or... She maneuvered her chair closer to the window and peeked between the blinds. A black pickup truck idled for a moment beneath the street lamp. Then it rolled down the street and vanished. Emma's breath came slowly. She couldn't be sure, but something about the truck, its tires, its hesitance, reminded her of the motorcycles earlier that day. Maybe she was being paranoid, or maybe her instincts were sharpening. She rolled back from the window, heart still racing. Toby hadn't barked. He hadn't sensed immediate danger. That helped. Still, she grabbed her emergency phone and set it on her nightstand. Then, she placed one hand on Toby's warm back and closed her eyes, trying to borrow his calm. As she drifted, a thought whispered through her mind. Griff had looked into her eyes when he laughed, but he also looked again, just before leaving. And this time, something in his face had changed. It wasn't the look of a man walking away. It was the look of someone who might come back. By the time morning light filtered through the curtains, Emma had barely slept. She rolled into the kitchen, finding her aunt already at the stove, frying eggs with one hand and typing on her phone with the other. Celia turned, her expression softening. "Morning, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" "Tired," Emma replied honestly. Toby patted in behind her, tail swaying lightly as if trying to cheer them both up. Celia nodded. "Coffee's not for kids, but I made hot cocoa again. You earned it." As they sat down for breakfast, the doorbell rang. Emma's stomach flipped. She glanced at her aunt. Celia's lips tightened. "I'll get it." She peered through the peephole and then opened the door to reveal a woman in plain clothes, her badge clipped neatly to her belt. "Detective Sienna Hart." The woman introduced herself with a polite nod. "Raleigh Police Department. May I come in?" Emma's heart thudded. She hadn't expected anyone so soon. Celia waved her in. "We were told someone might stop by." Detective Hart stepped into the living room, taking quiet note of everything. Emma's mobility scooter, Toby's service harness, the faint circles under Emma's eyes. She knelt down beside the dog and extended her hand. Toby sniffed, then gave a gentle wag. "Good dog," the detective murmured. "You must be the reason this girl is still standing. Well, sitting strong." Emma gave a hesitant smile. "He is." They all gathered near the coffee table. Hart opened a leather notebook. "Emma, I understand yesterday was very difficult. I won't take much of your time. But can you tell me what you remember about the man who kicked your dog?" Emma recounted everything. The leather vest, the name patch, the skull emblem, the way Griff's boot connected with Toby, the laughter that followed. "He wasn't alone," she added. "Two guys were with him. They didn't help." Hart scribbled notes quickly. "And the dog, Toby, he didn't retaliate?" "Number." "He backed up, growled, but didn't bite." Hart nodded with approval. Textbook service animal behavior. Celia cut in, her voice sharper. Is he going to be charged? We're working on identifying him fully. We have phone footage, and we're checking bike plates. But these things take time, Hart said carefully. Emma, I want you to be cautious. If you see that man again, call 911 immediately. Emma nodded slowly. What if he comes back? Hart's eyes narrowed. If he does, we'll be ready for him. After the detective left, Emma sat in silence. Toby rested his head on her lap, eyes watchful. She stroked his fur and whispered, They think it's over. But it's not, is it? Toby didn't answer, but the weight of him, steady and sure, said, We face it together. By early afternoon, the world outside had returned to its usual rhythm. Mail trucks groaned past, neighbors walked dogs, and wind chimes whispered from porches. Emma sat by the front window, homework propped open on her lap, but untouched. She was supposed to finish a science worksheet about simple machines. Instead, she stared at the street, eyes scanning for a shape she couldn't quite describe. Toby lay curled by the door, his ears twitching now and then. Celia moved through the house on a call with the insurance company. Emma could hear her voice rising and falling in frustrated tones. Ever since the accident, bills had stacked up, and no amount of budgeting seemed to keep them away. Emma wished she could do more than just be careful. She wanted to help. She wanted to act. She looked back at Toby. Maybe I should have said more to that detective, she muttered. Told her how he looked at me like I was a target. Toby blinked slowly. The doorbell rang again. Emma froze. Celia emerged from the kitchen, phone still in hand. Who now? This time she approached the window cautiously, pulling the curtain aside only a sliver. Her shoulders tensed. It's nobody I know. Emma wheeled closer. A man stood on the sidewalk, not on their porch, but close enough. He had long hair tied back, a bulky frame, and wore a denim jacket patched with symbols that looked vaguely familiar. Emma's breath caught. It's one of them, she whispered. He was with Griff. Celia's voice dropped. Are you sure? Emma nodded. The shorter one. He stood near the fountain. Didn't say a word, just watched. The man wasn't moving now, just standing, watching the house, his face unreadable. I'm calling Detective Hart, Celia said immediately, retreating with her phone. Emma watched as the man turned, slowly, and walked down the block without saying a word. He didn't run. He didn't yell. He just left, like he had all the time in the world. Toby let out a low growl, just once. Emma's heart thudded like a drum. She backed her chair away from the window. He knows where we live. The house no longer felt safe, not the porch, not even the morning sun. For the first time since the park, Emma felt like prey. And somewhere out there, Griff, or someone worse, was circling. That night, the suitcase sat by the front door, half-zipped, packed in a hurry. Celia hadn't wanted to scare Emma, but after speaking with Detective Hart again, there wasn't much choice. Just for a few days, she had said, until they figure out who this guy is and what he wants. They would stay at Celia's old college roommate's house, 2 towns over. A quiet place. No connection to Emma, no reason for anyone to follow. Emma sat on the edge of her bed, legs dangling, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes looked different, tired, sharper. She hardly recognized herself anymore. I hate this, she muttered. Toby lifted his head from the floor. I hate that they can just scare us, and we have to leave, like they won. She didn't cry, not this time, but the ache inside her chest grew tighter. Down the hall, Celia spoke in hushed tones to someone on speakerphone. Words like temporary relocation and off-grid contact floated faintly through the air. Emma rolled over to the window. The street outside looked quiet, but it didn't feel quiet. Every parked car, every shadow under a tree, it all felt like eyes watching. She closed the curtain. "Do you think they're coming back?" she asked softly, not even sure if she meant Griff or the man from earlier. Toby didn't move, but his ears twitched, alert. Emma reached over and brushed her hand across his head. "If they do, I won't let them near you again. I promise." There was a knock, gentle this time. Celia poked her head in, eyes strained, but trying to smile. "We'll leave first thing in the morning." Emma nodded. "Okay." "I know it feels like running, but it's not," Celia added. "It's protecting what matters." Emma wasn't sure she believed that. Later, she couldn't sleep. The hallway light glowed beneath her bedroom door. The silence was too heavy. Even with Toby curled at her side, the dread clung to her. At 1:12 a.m., she thought she saw movement outside the window. She grabbed her phone, heart racing. Her hands hovered over the camera app, but the window revealed nothing. No sound, no shape. She waited. Nothing. And yet, she knew something was coming. Something wasn't done with them. The next morning came too quickly. Celia's SUV rolled through quiet neighborhoods until the houses turned to farmland and trees. Emma sat in the back with Toby pressed close to her legs. A backpack filled with school supplies and a folded blanket sat beside her. She stared out the window, watching telephone poles blur by. They arrived at a cozy cabin, nestled behind a grove of pines. The gravel driveway crackled under the tires. A bluebird feeder swayed on the porch. Wind chimes whispered softly. "It's peaceful," Celia said, trying to sound upbeat. Emma nodded, though she wasn't sure what peace felt like anymore. Inside, everything smelled of cedar and vanilla. Celia's friend, Marin, welcomed them with warm muffins and quiet sympathy. She lived alone with 3 cats and shelves full of gardening books. She didn't ask many questions, which Emma appreciated. Toby sniffed the corners of the house cautiously, then curled up near the front window like a sentinel. By evening, Emma had done a little homework, read a few pages of a mystery novel, and tried not to constantly glance at the front door. Still, her hands trembled when she reached for her juice. The calmness of the house felt too fragile. That night, while Celia and Marin talked in the kitchen over sleepy mugs of chamomile tea, Emma sat on the guest bed, scrolling old photos of her and Toby. Her thumb stopped on one image, taken just days after she first got him. She was in a hospital gown, one arm still in a sling, and her face half swollen from tears. But Toby was pressed against her, eyes forward, posture proud. She remembered how he never left her side, even when the beeping machines scared him. A sudden sharp bark from the living room made her jolt. She rushed out. Toby was standing, tail stiff, staring at the front window. Emma froze. "What is it?" Celia came behind her. "Maybe an animal?" Toby didn't move. Emma crept closer and peered through the curtain. Just the empty gravel driveway. Nothing else. But Toby wouldn't sit down. Marin tried to laugh. "There's foxes around here, even deer." Emma said nothing, because for a split second, barely even a breath, she could have sworn she saw the faint outline of a figure beyond the trees. Motionless, watching. She backed away from the window, heart racing. Toby finally sat, but his gaze never left the glass. Celia noticed. "You saw something?" Emma nodded slowly. "I think someone found us." Emma barely slept that night. She stayed curled under the quilt, phone in hand, Toby nestled against her legs. Every creak in the wooden cabin, every gust of wind that rattled a tree branch outside, made her jolt. Her brain refused to settle. The figure in the trees might have been her imagination, or it might have been real. And if it was real, it meant Griff, or someone connected to him, had found them. By morning, dark clouds rolled in over the pines. Maren prepared blueberry pancakes, but Emma only picked at hers. Celia made phone calls from the porch, voice hushed but strained. Toby stayed glued to Emma, never more than a few feet away. When Detective Hart called just after noon, Celia took the call with the speaker off. But Emma could hear enough. Words like still searching, motorcycle, and no fixed address. Later, when Celia returned to the guest room where Emma sat sketching in silence, she gently took the pencil from her niece's hand. "Talk to me," she said softly. Emma stared at the drawing. It was a rough sketch of Toby, standing in front of a dark silhouette. She hadn't even realized what she was drawing until now. "I don't want to run anymore," Emma whispered. Celia sat beside her. "I know. What if it's not just Griff?" Emma's voice trembled. "What if there are more people like him? People who think it's funny to hurt dogs, or scare kids in chairs, or watch us from the woods and wait?" Celia reached for Emma's hand and held it tightly. "Then we make sure they don't win. We let the right people handle it. The police, the law. But what if they can't?" The room fell quiet. Toby let out a soft breath and rested his chin on Emma's shoe. Celia looked out the window. "We'll stay here a little longer. I've already told Detective Hart everything. She'll send someone to check the area tonight, just in case." Emma didn't reply. That night, the sky cracked open with thunder. Rain began to fall in heavy sheets, drowning the sounds of the forest. Emma stood by the window, flashlight in hand, peering into the darkened trees. For just a heartbeat, a flicker of movement passed between the trunks. Toby growled, low, almost a whisper. Emma didn't scream. She didn't move, because deep in her gut, she knew. Whoever it was hadn't come to watch this time. They'd come closer. The knock came just after midnight. 3 sharp raps, quick, deliberate. Celia bolted upright in her bed. Emma was already awake, heart pounding, still seated by the window with Toby pressed to her side. The flashlight had long gone dim in her grip. Celia appeared in the hallway seconds later, barefoot, holding her phone with one hand and a fireplace poker with the other. "Did you hear it too?" she whispered. Emma nodded. "Front door." Toby stood, body tense, tail low but ready. Maren emerged next, wrapped in a robe, her face pale. No one should be out in this weather. The rain hadn't let up. Thunder groaned somewhere in the distance. Water spilled from the gutters outside like miniature waterfalls. Celia crept toward the window beside the door and peeked through the curtain. Her breath hitched. Emma rolled closer. "What?" "There's someone standing out there. Hood up. Can't see the face." Toby growled low and deep. Celia's fingers hovered over the keypad on her phone. "I'm calling Hart." But before she could finish dialing, a voice came from the porch, muffled by the storm, but unmistakably human. "Please, I'm not here to hurt anyone." Emma's spine went rigid. She knew that voice. It wasn't Griff. It was the other man. The bulky one who had stood beside him in the park. The one who didn't laugh, didn't speak, just watched. Maren moved closer. "Do you recognize him?" Emma nodded slowly. "He was there the day Toby was kicked." Celia's grip on the poker tightened. "Step back," she said firmly, "and lock the guest room. Now." Emma obeyed, rolling backward with Toby pacing beside her. From the doorway, she could still hear everything. "I need to talk," the man shouted from the porch. "Please, it's not what you think. I'm not like him. I didn't know he was going to do that. I didn't want any part of it." "You need to leave," Celia called out through the locked door. "I will," he replied. But I have information about Griff and what he's planning. Emma's breath caught. Outside, the rain fell harder. Inside, time seemed to freeze. The man on the porch didn't move closer. He didn't try to force his way in, but his voice carried something else now. Urgency. Regret. He's looking for the girl, he said, and not just to scare her. Toby growled again, now facing the door, ears up, muscles tight. Emma whispered, "He knows." Celia's voice shook. "We're calling the police." "Good," the man said. "You should." And then he stepped back into the rain and disappeared into the dark. By the time the police arrived, the man was long gone. 3 cruisers pulled up just before 1 a.m., their red-blue strobes reflecting off the rain-slick driveway. Detective Hart stepped out of the first car, soaked from the dash to the porch, but unfazed. "Tell me everything," she said. Celia recounted the knock, the voice, the exact words. Emma, still trembling slightly, filled in the description of the man. Broad shoulders, dark denim jacket, hair tied back. Hart's jaw tightened. "That matches the description of Brent Cole. He's one of Griff Weller's known associates. Minor record, mostly fights, a few trespassing charges. He was ID'd from the park footage, but disappeared right after." Emma glanced up. "He said Griff was looking for me, that he didn't just want to scare me." Hart gave a small nod. "That tracks with what we've been seeing." Celia leaned forward. "What does that mean?" Hart motioned for them to sit. The group gathered around Marin's living room. An officer stood guard outside the front door, while 2 more swept the perimeter. "We've been tracking Griff's movements," Hart said. "He's not just drifting. He's been spotted near places linked to Emma, your old school, the rehab center, even the dog trainer's property. He's circling." Emma's mouth went dry. "Why?" "We're not sure," Hart admitted. "But this isn't just a grudge. Someone like Griff doesn't go out of his way unless he's fixated, which means we need to stay 1 step ahead." Celia's face was pale. "So what now? Do we leave again?" "No," Hart said firmly. "You've done enough running. We'll increase protection. You'll stay here under patrol. We're also putting out a BOLO on Brent Cole. If he contacts you again, do not engage." Emma was silent. Hart turned to her. "You did the right thing, but you need to know. Guys like Griff, they escalate. The best thing you can do now is stay alert, stay surrounded, and let us handle it." Toby, sitting at Emma's feet, let out a small breath. After the police left, the cabin felt tense but fortified. Flashlights had been passed out, phones fully charged. Celia double-checked every lock twice. Emma sat by the window again. Outside, the storm had passed, but she didn't feel calm. She kept hearing Brent's voice. He's looking for the girl. And in her gut, she knew something. Griff wasn't circling anymore. He was closing in. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. After the officers left, after Hart's cruiser disappeared into the trees, Emma sat awake on the couch with Toby's head resting on her thigh. Celia had finally gone to bed, exhaustion carving shadows under her eyes. But Emma's mind wouldn't stop spinning. The warning still echoed in her ears. He's not just trying to scare her. She stared at the fireplace, flames flickering low. Toby let out a sleepy sigh. The warmth of his body grounded her, but the sense of danger lingered like static in the air. She replayed everything from the park again. Not the kick, not the crowd, but the moment before. Griff had said something, not the joke, not the slur. Something, under his breath. Emma furrowed her brow and whispered aloud, "What was it?" She closed her eyes and dug deeper into the memory. She had just reached for her lemonade. The straw still tilted. Toby had been sitting alert, and Griff had leaned slightly toward her, not to threaten, but to look, and he'd said, almost casually, "Can't believe it's Braxton's kid." Emma's eyes snapped open. Braxton. That wasn't just her last name, it was her dad's. Her father, Officer Daniel Braxton, had died in a car accident 2 years earlier. That accident had paralyzed her. Everyone had said it was a tragedy, a drunk driver, no foul play. But now, she whispered, "He knew my dad." Toby stirred beneath her voice. Emma reached for her tablet and began searching. Griff Weller and Braxton. No immediate hits. But then she tried Daniel Braxton disciplinary records. Nothing official. But buried in a forum thread from years ago was a comment. Braxton was the guy who shut down that biker chop shop out near Old Creek Road. Got one of them locked up for 5 years. Weller, I think. Emma's breath caught. She sat frozen. Griff wasn't just some violent man on the road. He had a reason. He had history. This wasn't about the dog. This wasn't even about Emma. It was about revenge. She stood, carefully cradling the tablet, and made her way to Celia's room. The door was half open. Her aunt stirred as she entered. "What is it?" Celia mumbled. Emma held out the tablet. He knew Dad. Celia blinked at the screen, read, reread, and then whispered, "Oh my God." Outside, the forest was still, but inside the cabin, the temperature dropped. Because now they understood. Griff Weller wasn't following a girl. He was hunting the last living piece of the man who put him away. Detective Hart called back before sunrise. Celia had barely finished reading Emma's discovery when the phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. The detective's voice, though groggy, sharpened instantly when Celia mentioned the quote. "He said what?" Hart repeated. Emma leaned close to the speaker. He said, "Can't believe it's Braxton's kid," right before he kicked Toby. There was a pause. Then, "That's not just a taunt. That's intent." Celia's voice dropped. "You think it's connected to Daniel?" "Very possible," Hart said. "I'll run a deeper check on Weller's background. If Braxton arrested him, or anyone close, this could be personal, and that changes everything." Emma's fingers clenched the edge of the counter. "He's not just angry, he's planning something." "We'll step up protection," Hart promised. "But Emma, I need anything else you remember." Any detail Emma's mind whirled. She tried to dig back through moments, words, tones, glances. Then something surfaced. He had a scar, a long one, running from his left ear down to his collarbone. He tried to hide it under the jacket, but it peeked out when he leaned forward. Hart hummed. "That's useful. There was a brawl reported in prison years ago. Weller almost got his throat slit. If that's him, yeah, this helps." "Thank you." After the call ended, Celia brewed coffee in silence. The kettle hissed like warning steam from a train. Maren stayed quiet in the hallway, clearly shaken. Emma stared out the window. The morning mist hadn't lifted. Pine trees swayed gently, but she couldn't shake the feeling that one of them was hiding something. Or someone. "He's turning this into a vendetta," she said finally. "But he doesn't get to finish what he started." Celia gave a tired smile. "You've got your dad's fire." Emma glanced at Toby, who sat poised, staring at the door. "He's got his dog's loyalty." That day, they didn't leave the cabin. 2 patrol cars rotated shifts just out of sight. Detective Hart sent an officer named Ruiz to sit inside with them for a few hours. He was young, serious, and polite, but his presence made the danger feel more real. Emma showed him the message board post. Ruiz squinted. "Old Creek Road? That's where Weller's crew had their bike shop, right? Burned down 10 years ago." "Is it still there?" Emma asked. "Mostly rubble, but it's out past town. No cameras. Easy to disappear into. Emma's eyes narrowed. If Griff had a reason to circle, then maybe it was time someone circled back. After Officer Ruiz left that afternoon, Emma couldn't sit still. Her legs didn't work, but her mind was sprinting. She rolled into the guest bedroom, pulled out her dad's old memory box from beneath the bed. Celia had brought it from their house months ago, full of photographs, medals, faded notepads, and old police gear. Emma hadn't opened it in a long time, until now. Toby stood nearby, watching her with alert eyes. Inside the box, beneath a stack of worn letters, she found it, a laminated map of Raleigh and the surrounding county. Her dad had marked several locations with red circles. Some were crime scenes. Others were notes from cases he never finished. And one, near the very edge, was labeled in faded ink, Old Creek Road, Chop Shop, Weller Crew, shut down 2012. Emma traced the circle with her finger. She had no idea why her dad kept the map updated. Maybe he knew one day someone might need it. Maybe deep down, he knew unfinished things come back. "Toby," she whispered, "what if he left us a trail?" She dug further into the box and pulled out a small notebook labeled Post-Case Notes, Confidential, in bold black ink. Inside, her dad's handwriting ran tight and clean across the yellowed pages. Names, timelines, paranoia, and one line that made her stomach twist. Griff Weller, volatile, prone to vengeance, warned he'd come after family if I pushed charges. I did it anyway. Emma leaned back. Celia knocked gently. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" Emma held out the notebook. He knew. Dad knew Griff would come for us. Celia sat on the edge of the bed, reading. Her mouth tightened. "This changes things." Emma nodded. "We're not just reacting anymore." "What do you mean?" "I want to go there," Emma said, voice steady. "Old Creek Road. I want to see what he's hiding. Maybe we find something, or maybe he's already there." Celia looked at her like she had two heads. "Emma, that place is dangerous. So is waiting." Outside, the wind shifted. Clouds gathered low. Toby let out a low, uncertain whine, as if he too sensed something was pulling them forward. Celia ran a hand through her hair, torn between fear and pride. "Let me talk to Detective Hart first. No decisions yet. But maybe you're right." Emma closed the notebook. Her father's words were still echoing in her head. Warned he'd come after family. Maybe it was time the family answered back. Detective Hart wasn't thrilled. "This is not a game," she said over the speakerphone. "That location hasn't been patrolled in years. No security, no lighting. And if Griff is there—" Emma interrupted, calm but firm. "Then that's exactly why we should check it out." There was a pause. Hart sighed. "Fine. I'll send 2 patrol cars to sweep the area first. You do not go near it until I say it's clear." Celia looked both relieved and worried. "Thank you, Detective." "Emma," Hart added, her voice softening, "I know you want to help, but I also need you safe. You're not just bait in someone else's story." "I'm not bait," Emma said. "I'm the one he's circling." That ended the call. 2 hours later, the family SUV pulled into a narrow service road that veered away from the main highway. Officer Ruiz led the escort in a marked cruiser. Behind them, another vehicle followed. It was dusk now. The trees loomed taller. The road narrowed, cracked with weeds, nearly forgotten by time. At the end of the trail, the ruins of a building emerged like bones from undergrowth. Charred beams, rusted frames, concrete slabs split from weather and time. Old Creek Road. "This used to be it?" Emma asked quietly. Ruiz nodded. "The chop shop. Fire gutted it years ago. Some folks say Weller tried to torch it himself to erase evidence." Toby barked once, sharp and alert. Everyone froze. From behind the collapsed wall, something shifted, a flash of motion, then gone. Ruiz raised a hand. "Stay in the car." But Emma was already unlocking her seatbelt. Celia gripped her arm. "Don't. I'm not going far." Emma wheeled toward the edge of the lot, Toby at her side like armor. Ruiz stepped ahead, one hand on his holstered weapon, the other signaling his partner to sweep around back. The place smelled of old oil, rain-soaked ash, and rot. Emma spotted something, just past the ruins, a scorched workbench, on it, a box. Ruiz approached it first, popped it open with a pen. Inside, photographs, dozens, and one of them made Ruiz stiffen. He handed it to Emma. It was a picture of her, recent, in her wheelchair, from the park. She stared, breath caught in her chest. Taped to the back was a torn scrap of paper. 4 words written in blocky pen. "The dog dies first." Emma stared at the photo in her hands. Her own face stared back, caught mid-laugh, sitting in her wheelchair outside the smoothie stand, downtown. Toby stood beside her, leash in hand, tail mid-wag. It wasn't just a picture. It was recent. It had been taken without her knowledge. The note on the back chilled her more than the photo itself. "The dog dies first." Celia's breath caught as she read it over Emma's shoulder. "He's been following us." "Not just following," Emma whispered. "He's studying." Officer Ruiz snapped a photo of the evidence and slipped the original into a sealed bag. "This wasn't left here by accident," he muttered. "It's bait, or a warning, or both." The other officer returned from behind the ruins, shaking his head. "Nothing alive back there. Just empty bottles and some fresh tire tracks. No license plates. We're too late." Celia looked around the desolate space. "We shouldn't be here." Ruiz agreed. "We're leaving. I'll get the forensic team out here tonight, but we're heading back. This place isn't safe." As they turned toward the vehicles, Emma felt Toby stiffen beside her. His ears perked sharply. His body went rigid. He let out a single growl, deep, controlled, directed. Emma turned her chair slowly. There, across the tree line, a shadow, still, watching. She didn't see the face, just the stance. Broad shoulders, dark jacket, one arm twitching slightly at his side. Ruiz reached for his radio. "Visual on potential suspect. East tree line. Do not approach alone. Repeat, do not approach." The figure backed into the woods. No rush, no panic, just vanishing. "He's taunting us," Ruiz spat. "He wants us to feel hunted." "Well, it's working," Celia muttered. They piled into the car fast. Ruiz followed tight behind. Emma didn't speak during the ride back. She kept her hand on Toby's neck the whole time, fingers buried in his fur. When they reached the cabin, patrol units were already stationed outside. Ruiz handed off the evidence and relayed what they saw. Detective Hart called as they stepped inside. Her voice was grave. "I don't think this ends with threats anymore." Emma answered quietly. "Then it's time we stop waiting." Hart paused. "You mean?" "I want to be part of the plan," Emma said. "He's not just after me. He's after everything my dad stood for. So let's give him something he can't predict." Celia looked at her niece with both fear and awe. And Toby? He simply sat at her side, steady as ever, ready for whatever came next. That night, the cabin transformed. What once felt like a safe haven now bristled with quiet urgency. Every window was checked, every lock reinforced. The porch light stayed on. One officer remained parked at the end of the gravel road, engine humming like a warning growl. Inside, Emma spread her father's map across the dining table. Celia, Detective Hart, now present in person, and Officer Ruiz gathered around her like a war council. "He's not just following me," Emma began. "He's circling old ground, my dad's ground." Hart nodded. Old Creek Road, the park, the smoothie stand. They're all places tied to your past or routine. And this place? Celia asked. Is he watching us here too? Hart didn't answer right away. Ruiz spoke instead. If he was watching from the tree line today, chances are he's been closer than we thought. The forest gives good cover. Emma pressed her finger on the map. What if we stop reacting? What if we control the board? Hart looked intrigued. Go on. I want to draw him out, Emma said. Use what he wants against him. Make him think he's winning. Celia's eyes widened. Emma, no. But Hart leaned in. You want to set a trap. Emma nodded. He's watching me because I'm Daniel Braxton's daughter. That makes me bait, but I can choose how I'm used. Ruiz crossed his arms. We'd need controlled space, hidden surveillance, a backup team ready, and you, safe at all times. I won't be alone, Emma said. Toby will be with me, always. Celia ran a hand over her face. This is insane. She's 16. I'm the reason he's here, Emma said. If I do nothing, he wins. If I act, we end this. Silence hung over the room. Finally, Hart said, There's a closed ranger station near the river, abandoned, but wired for emergency comms. Enough cover to hide a team. We can fake a routine visit, make it seem like you're vulnerable and alone. Ruiz nodded. And if Griff shows up, we'll be ready. Celia stared at Emma, eyes shining. You shouldn't have to do this. Emma smiled gently. Neither should Dad. But he did. Hart stood. We plan tomorrow. We move the day after. If he's watching, let's give him a show. Toby let out a low bark, as if in agreement. Emma reached down, rubbing his ears. Time to turn the hunter into the hunted. And just like that, the girl in the wheelchair became the center of a plan that could either bring justice or burn everything down. The ranger station hadn't seen life in years. Tucked at the edge of Ravenwood Forest, it sat half-sunk into the earth, roofline blanketed with moss, windows dusty and broken in places. But inside, it still held structure, rooms, wiring, storage closets, perfect for a trap. By noon, a quiet fleet of unmarked vehicles rolled in. Ruiz and his partner swept the grounds. 2 techs followed, hauling equipment, motion detectors, hidden cameras, satellite-linked comms. A backup generator kicked on, casting a quiet hum over the building. From a distance, it looked abandoned. From the inside, it became a command post. Emma arrived late afternoon, wheeled out of the SUV by Celia herself. Toby trotted beside her, harness clipped, eyes scanning everything. Hart met them at the door. We've got 4 officers stationed in blind spots, heat sensors around the perimeter, a drone overhead during daylight, infrared at night. We're covered. Emma rolled inside, taking in every corner. It'll work. You'll stay in this front room, Hart said, pointing to a small office space with cracked blinds. It looks exposed, but we've cleared all angles. We'll monitor everything from the back. Celia looked unconvinced. And Griff? What if he's smarter than this? That's why we're not just waiting, Hart said. We're provoking. They staged the bait carefully. Emma would be seen, through a half-open window, talking to Toby, reading, looking relaxed. A solar-powered lamp would keep her lit just enough. From outside, it would look like she was alone, vulnerable. But she wouldn't be. A mic on her hoodie, panic button under the blanket on her lap. Toby's vest had a small GoPro embedded on the collar. All they needed was for Griff to bite. I still don't like this, Celia muttered. Emma smiled faintly. I don't either. But I'm done hiding. That night, she stayed in the station. Celia and Hart rotated, watching shifts from the back room, while officers monitored feeds from a remote van parked uphill. Hours passed. An owl called once. The wind picked up. Toby stayed alert at the window. Emma pretended to doze. Then, just before midnight, the motion detector blinked red. Hart leaned forward. East side. Movement. Ruiz clicked his radio. All teams ready. Outside, something rustled, soft, deliberate. Then silence. Then a knock. One single knock on the warped front door. Emma's heart stopped. She turned to the camera, gave one sharp nod. Then she whispered to Toby, "Showtime. Knock. Just once." Not loud, not hurried, almost polite. The kind of knock that didn't need to ask permission, because it already assumed entry. Emma didn't move. Her eyes flicked to the side, catching the red light blinking on the corner camera. They were watching. They were ready. Toby stood, muscles taut, ears locked on the door. Another knock, this time lower, slower, then silence. Emma whispered, "Stay, boy," and let her fingers slide beneath the fleece blanket, tapping once on the hidden panic switch. A soft vibration answered from her earpiece. Signal received. She turned slightly, angling her chair just enough so she was facing the entryway. Celia's voice crackled in her ear. "He's at the front. Confirmed visual, just outside. Ruiz is circling left. Do not engage." Emma didn't answer. She just stared at the door. A shadow passed across the frosted glass panel. Then a voice, rough, low, familiar from that day in the park. "Well, well. Daddy's little project, still smiling?" Emma's hands clenched the armrests. He didn't open the door. He waited, then said, "You know what the worst part was? Your mutt didn't even bark when I followed you home that night. Loyal, but dumb." Toby growled, low and steady. Emma leaned forward. "He didn't bark because you weren't a threat then." No reply. Then the sound of footsteps, retreating. Hart's voice cut in. "He's moving east. Team 2, flank now." Emma jolted as Toby suddenly sprang to the window. Outside, movement, fast. A blur of a man dashing into the tree line. "Go!" Hart barked into the radio. Chaos exploded beyond the glass. Flashlights danced. Officers shouted. One command echoed clear. "Drop it, hands up!" Gunmetal clattered on rock. Silence. Emma waited, breath shallow. Then, Ruiz's voice, sharp and triumphant. "We've got him! Suspect in custody!" Toby barked once, tail high. Emma exhaled slowly and let her body relax into the chair. Hart came in moments later, winded but smiling. He ran right into the snare. Classic predator move. Test the prey, then circle again. But you held steady. Celia rushed in behind her, eyes wide with worry, then wrapped Emma in the tightest hug she'd had in years. Emma didn't cry. She just whispered, "He's not my shadow anymore." Hart's voice softened. "Number now, he's just a name in a file, right where he belongs." Outside, the trees swayed under the weight of a breeze. But for once, nothing felt like it was watching. Morning came quietly. No sirens, no shouting, just wind brushing against pine needles and a sky turning the soft blue of survival. Emma didn't sleep much. After Griff Weller was taken away, after the patrol cars drove off with their lights muted and engines low, she had sat in silence for nearly an hour, not thinking, not speaking, just existing. The cabin felt like it was breathing again. She made her way out to the front porch just after sunrise. Celia had insisted she stay in bed, but Emma needed air, fresh air, real air, the kind that didn't carry the weight of secrets. Toby followed, of course, his paws making almost no sound on the wooden floorboards. He sat beside her chair, head tilted slightly as if asking, "What now?" "I don't know," Emma whispered. "But it's different now, isn't it?" The dog huffed gently, leaning his weight against her leg. Behind her, Celia poured coffee in the kitchen. The rich scent drifted out with the breeze. Hart had stayed the night in the guest room, sleeping in shifts alongside Ruiz, just in case. But even they knew it was over. Griff was in custody. weapons confiscated, car impounded, and, most chilling of all, photos, maps, and recordings found hidden inside his trunk. He'd been planning for weeks, maybe months. The scariest part wasn't what he did. It was what he almost did. Emma looked up at the trees, now lit gold by the morning sun. Somewhere, her dad's old badge sat in a shadow box back home. She thought about that now, about the man who'd always said, "We don't run from darkness. We bring a light to it." Last night, she finally understood what that meant. Celia stepped outside with 2 mugs. She handed one to Emma without a word. The warmth felt good in her fingers. "So," Celia finally said, sitting beside her, "what do you want to do today?" Emma smiled faintly. "Not be chased. That's a solid plan." They sipped in silence. Down the driveway, Hart appeared, already dressed, already back in officer mode. She raised a hand. "You okay?" Emma nodded. "More than okay." Hart approached, her voice low. "They're transferring him to Raleigh by noon. Federal charges incoming. He won't be near you again." Emma looked her straight in the eyes. "But someone else might." Hart blinked. "Then what?" "Then I'll be ready," Emma said. "Next time, I won't need a trap. I'll see them coming." And she meant it. Because from that morning forward, she wasn't a victim. She was a survivor. The police cruiser dropped them off just before noon. The sun was high. The front yard looked exactly the same. Same wind chimes, same cracked sidewalk, same sleepy neighborhood vibe. But to Emma, everything felt different. The air didn't carry fear anymore, just weightless possibility. As Celia unlocked the front door, Emma hesitated at the threshold. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't looking over her shoulder. Toby padded inside first, tail wagging cautiously, like even he wasn't quite convinced they were truly home. Celia placed a hand gently on Emma's back. "It's yours again." Emma rolled forward, wheels humming softly against the hardwood. The house smelled faintly of lemons and dust. The sun filtered through the living room window in long strips of light. On the wall hung a photo of her dad. Uniform crisp, smile calm, hand resting proudly on a K9's collar. Emma paused in front of it. She studied his face for a long time. "I did it," she whispered. Celia didn't interrupt. Later that afternoon, the mail came. Among the bills and flyers was a small padded envelope. No return address. Ruiz had already cleared it before handing it over. Inside, a single dog tag. Toby's old ID tag, the one he'd lost at the training park 2 months ago. The one they thought had just slipped off. Taped to it was a note in blocky handwriting. He would have been proud. Emma stared at it. Not Griff's handwriting. Someone else. She didn't say anything. She just folded the note and placed it in her father's memory box upstairs, alongside the badge and the map. Let it sit with the rest of the ghosts. That night, she and Celia ordered pizza, watched bad reality TV, and let the silence fill in the spaces where fear used to live. Toby curled up at Emma's feet, breathing deep, one paw twitching in sleep. As the screen flickered with images of strangers competing for prizes they didn't need, Emma leaned her head on Celia's shoulder and said, "I'm thinking about school." Celia blinked. "School?" "I might go back," Emma said. "Not forever, just a little. To see what it feels like." Celia smiled slowly. "You sure?" "No," Emma admitted, "but that's okay." And somehow it was, because healing wasn't a finish line. It was just walking through a door you once feared and realizing it no longer had power over you. Tomorrow would come, with new shadows maybe, but also with new light. And Emma, she'd be ready for both. The school parking lot looked smaller than she remembered. It had only been a few months, but to Emma, It felt like years had passed, like the world had spun 5 extra times, just for her. Celia parked close to the front, in the accessible zone, engine still running. "You want me to walk you in?" she asked. Emma shook her head. "I think I need to do this alone." Celia hesitated. "Call me if anything feels off, or too much, or—" "I'll be okay," Emma said softly, giving her aunt's hand a quick squeeze. "Really?" Toby hopped down from the back seat, his vest freshly cleaned, his ID tag gleaming like a badge of honor. Together they approached the front doors. Students milled around the hallway, lockers clanging, laughter echoing off the walls. But when Emma entered, everything dipped a beat, like someone hit pause for half a second. She wasn't the girl who used to sit near the back in silence anymore. She was the girl from the news, the one who helped catch a wanted criminal, the one who didn't run, the one who fought back. She could feel the eyes, the whispers. "Is that her?" "I think so. The one with the dog? Did you hear she was the bait?" Emma didn't look at anyone. She didn't need to. Toby walked proudly beside her, guiding her through the crowd like a bodyguard in fur. At her locker, someone had left a folded note. She opened it with steady fingers. "You're braver than all of us. Welcome back. A friend." She smiled. In first period, the teacher paused when she entered. A flicker of surprise, then warmth. "Emma Braxton," he said. "Good to have you back." She nodded and made her way to her seat. Someone in the back clapped, then another. It wasn't loud or theatrical, just sincere. Quiet support. Emma sat down, adjusted her notes, and looked straight ahead. Not down, not away. Forward. At lunch, she sat under the oak tree near the quad. Toby rested beside her, chin on his paws. A girl from art class approached slowly. "Hey, I saved your seat in homeroom. No pressure. Just if you want." Emma didn't answer right away. Then she smiled. "Thanks. I'd like that." And just like that, the world didn't feel quite so far away anymore. By the end of her first week back, Emma had already figured out how to filter the stares. Some were curious, some were cautious. A few were downright awkward. But the ones that lingered, the ones that watched her not with fear or pity, but respect, those were the ones she clung to. It was Lucas, the editor of the school newspaper, who made the first real move. He found her near the vending machines between classes, notebook in hand, eyes hopeful. "Emma," he said, "can I talk to you for a second?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I know this is weird," he started, "and I swear I'm not trying to exploit anything. But we're doing a special edition. Voices from students who've been through real stuff. I thought maybe you'd want to write something." Emma blinked. "You want me to write?" "I mean, no one else lived it," he said, "but only if you want to. Your story, your words. I'll give you full space. No edits, unless you ask." She didn't answer right away. But that night, sitting on her bed with Toby asleep at her feet, she opened her laptop and began typing. It wasn't polished. It wasn't poetic. It was raw. She wrote about the silence of fear, about what it feels like to be watched, about how courage isn't loud. It's choosing to show up when everything inside says run. She didn't name Griff, didn't mention the cabin or the trap. She just wrote about surviving and what comes after. By morning, she sent it in. 3 days later, it was published on the front page under the title, "What No One Saw," by Emma Braxton. Celia cried reading it. Her classmates didn't say much, but their actions changed. Someone placed a granola bar on her desk with a note, "Power snack for a power girl." Another left a sketch of Toby in her locker with a speech bubble that said, "We bark at the darkness." Emma smiled at each quiet gesture. She didn't want fame. She wanted connection. And slowly, word by word, it found her. By Friday, she was invited to join the peer mentorship group. Not as a guest, as a guide. And when she rolled into that room, unsure of what to say, a younger student looked up and whispered, "I read what you wrote. It helped." Emma nodded, voice soft but firm. Then it was worth it. Emma wasn't trying to be a leader, but sometimes the world decides for you. After her article went live, the guidance counselor asked if she'd like to attend a student safety board meeting. Just observe, no pressure. Emma said yes. It wasn't the kind of yes she used to give, the quiet, automatic one that avoided attention. It was steady, intentional. She rolled into the meeting room that Thursday afternoon, notebook on her lap, Toby beside her in full vest. Around the table sat teachers, a few student reps, and a vice principal, who looked permanently distracted. At first, no one paid much attention to her, until she spoke. "There's no formal process for students to report if they feel unsafe," she said, flipping a page. "You have a hotline, but no one talks about it. No posters, no training." The room quieted. "And the back door to the gym," she added, "still doesn't lock properly." The VP cleared his throat. "We've had budget constraints." Emma raised an eyebrow. "But we had money for new football jerseys." A pause. Then, from the far end of the table, a teacher smiled. "She's not wrong." By the end of the meeting, they'd agreed to start a student-led safety audit. Emma was asked to co-chair. She didn't expect it to grow, but it did. Over the next week, students came forward with quiet stories. Locker rooms with broken lights, a classroom window that never shut properly. One freshman who admitted he walked the long way home just to avoid a dark alley near the school fence. Emma took notes. She didn't lecture. She listened. And something remarkable happened. Others started listening too. A week later, they posted a new board in the hallway. Safe Voices, Anonymous Reporting Zone. Students began pinning notes, real ones. And when the principal passed by one day and saw it covered in color-coded cards, she paused. "Who started this?" Emma looked up from her lap. "No one," she said. "We just made it easier to speak." That night, Celia picked her up from school, and Emma was humming in the front seat. "Good day?" her aunt asked. Emma nodded. I think I'm helping." Celia smiled. "You always were. Now the world's just catching up." And as they drove home, streetlights blinking on one by one, Emma stared out the window and thought about how sometimes surviving isn't just about you. It's about making sure the next person doesn't have to do it alone. It arrived on a Tuesday. Just a plain envelope, no return address, no handwriting on the outside, only Emma's name, typed neatly, centered. Celia found it in the mailbox, brows furrowed. "Look official," she said, handing it to Emma like it might shatter. Emma turned it over. No seal, no markings. She opened it at the kitchen table. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No threats, no signatures. Just one paragraph. "They say monsters are born. I wasn't. I became one. And it started the day I saw fear in someone else's eyes and realized I could control it. You didn't give me that fear. You took it away. That night in the woods, you were the mirror I couldn't look into. I'm glad they caught me. Not because I'm sorry, because you ended it. And I hate that." Emma's hand froze on the paper. Celia leaned forward. "Is it from him?" Emma nodded once. "Griff." The name tasted bitter in her mouth, but the fear didn't rise with it. Toby whined softly under the table, sensing the change in air. Celia reached for the letter. "We can report it. Have the police trace it, log it." "No," Emma said, folding it slowly. "It doesn't change anything." "But it's a threat." "No," she repeated. It's a confession. And it was. Not an apology, not remorse, just truth, raw and ugly, the kind that tried to claw its way under your skin and rewrite history. But Emma wasn't a blank page anymore. She got up, walked to the fireplace, and tossed the letter in. The flame caught the edge instantly. Within seconds, the words curled into ash. Celia watched her, silent. "I thought it would make me angry," Emma said, "but it didn't." He wanted the last word. "You didn't give it to him," Celia whispered. "No," Emma said. "I gave it to myself." That night, Emma added a new page to her journal. Not a rant, not even a retelling, just one line. Survivors don't owe closure to the people who broke them. She closed the book, slid it under her pillow, and turned out the light. In the dark, she didn't listen for footsteps. She didn't scan for shadows. She just listened to Toby's breathing. Steady, calm, like a heartbeat outside her own. And for the first time in a long, long time, she slept all the way through the night. The knock on the door wasn't sharp or hurried. It was tentative, almost unsure. Emma had just returned from school. Her backpack was still on the counter, and Toby had yet to settle at her feet when the sound came again. Knock, pause, knock. She wheeled toward the door, heart steady but curious. Through the peephole, a face she hadn't seen in nearly a year came into view. Noah, her brother, half-brother technically, son of her dad from his first marriage, the boy who left town right after the funeral and never looked back. Until now. She opened the door but didn't move aside. "Noah," she said, guarded. He looked older, sharper around the jaw, tired in the eyes. His hoodie was wrinkled, his hands stuffed into the pockets like he didn't quite know what to do with them. "Hey, Em," he said, voice soft. She didn't respond. I heard what happened," he continued. "I should have called. I know that." "You didn't." "I was stupid," he admitted. "But I'm here now." She tilted her head. "Why?" He pulled something from his pocket, a folded photograph. Her dad, in uniform, standing between the two of them at a park years ago. "He kept this in his wallet," Noah said. "I found it last week while cleaning out my storage unit. Thought maybe it was time I stopped hiding." Emma took the photo slowly. It was creased, but intact. "I'm not here to make excuses," Noah added. I wanted to see you, make sure you were okay." "I am. I can tell," he said with a small smile. "You're stronger than all of us." Emma didn't smile back, but she stepped aside. "Come in." He blinked. "Really? For 10 minutes?" Inside, Toby sniffed him warily, then sat nearby with watchful eyes. They sat at the kitchen table. Celia wasn't home yet. The silence between them was thick, but not angry. Just unfinished. Noah glanced at her and said, "I never knew how to be your brother. I ran before I had to learn." Emma looked at him carefully. "Then start now," she said, "by listening." And for the next hour, that's all he did. No defenses, no interruptions, just listening. And for Emma, that was enough. Because sometimes the people who left don't come back to fix the past. They come back to be part of what's next. Noah didn't vanish again. He started showing up on Saturdays, sometimes with takeout, sometimes with a book he thought Emma might like. They didn't talk about the past much. Mostly they talked about music, about Dad, and, to her surprise, even about therapy. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. At school, things were starting to feel normal, almost boring. Emma liked boring, until the whispers started again. Not about her this time, about a girl named Aisha. She was quiet, a freshman, always wore oversized sweaters and kept to the back of the room. Emma had only seen her in passing, shy eyes, headphones, always rushing out before lunch. Then came the texts, the anonymous posts, the edited photos that started popping up on hallway bulletin boards. Cruel, targeted, cowardly. Emma overheard two students in the bathroom. "Did you see what someone wrote about her online?" "Yeah, brutal, but she kind of brings it on herself." Emma's blood went cold. It was too familiar. By the end of the day, Aisha didn't show up to 8th period. Emma stood outside the guidance office the next morning, debating. Was it her place? Would speaking up make her a target again? Was it worth the risk? That afternoon, she saw Aisha sitting alone under the stairwell near the gym, eyes down, shoulders curled in like she was trying to disappear. Emma rolled over and sat beside her. Neither spoke for a moment. Then Emma said, "They tried to break me too." Aisha looked up, startled. "You don't even know me." "No," Emma agreed, "but I recognize the look in your eyes." A long silence. Then Aisha whispered, "It won't stop." Emma turned toward her. "Not unless someone makes it." Aisha blinked. "You?" Emma smiled faintly. "Us." And just like that, a line was drawn. The next day, Emma met with the principal and presented screenshots, printed posts, and a list of locker numbers she suspected were connected. She didn't name Aisha. She didn't have to. She just said, "Someone needs to protect the quiet kids." That afternoon, 2 students were suspended. The rest took the message seriously. Aisha didn't speak much after that, but when she passed Emma in the hallway, she gave her a nod. Not gratitude, recognition, because survivors know survivors, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to look away. It started with a voicemail. "Emma, it's Lorraine. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I was wondering if you and Noah might come to dinner, just once." Lorraine, their grandmother, the same woman who hadn't spoken to them since their father's funeral, who refused to take Emma in after the accident, who said things like, "I'm too old to raise more broken children." Emma played the message twice, then left it on the table for Noah to hear. He listened in silence. "Well," he muttered, "that's unexpected." "You want to go?" Emma asked. He hesitated. "I don't know, but maybe we should." "Why?" "Because maybe this isn't about her. Maybe it's about us." That Sunday, they went. The house hadn't changed. Same porch swing, same lace curtains in the window. It smelled like lemon polish and something faintly floral. Lavender, maybe. Lorraine opened the door, older, thinner, but still sharp in the eyes. "Emma, Noah." She nodded, then stepped back. "Come in." Dinner was awkward. Roast chicken, soft rolls, a pie that looked homemade, but untouched. Conversation drifted from weather to school to the price of gas. Then Lorraine set down her fork. "I've been following the news," she said, voice tight. "Emma, what you did, it was brave." Emma didn't respond. Lorraine looked down. "I wasn't brave. When your father died, I didn't know how to handle it. I told myself it wasn't my place, that someone else would step up, and when no one did, you turned away." Noah finished. "I did," she whispered, "and I was wrong." The silence stretched. Then Emma said quietly, "I don't need an apology." Lorraine looked up. "You don't?" Emma shook her head. "I needed someone then. You weren't there. That doesn't change, but I'm not here to rewrite it." "Then why are you here?" Lorraine asked, almost afraid. Emma looked at Noah. "Because we decided to stop carrying other people's guilt, and because maybe healing doesn't always come from the ones who hurt us. Sometimes it comes from showing up anyway." Lorraine blinked hard, lips trembling. "Would you come again next Sunday?" Emma didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. As they left, Noah asked, "Do you think she means it?" "I think," Emma said. She finally sees us for who we are. And who's that? Not the broken ones, she replied. The ones who kept going. It was supposed to be a small ceremony. A school award, a plaque, a few polite claps. Emma agreed to attend, thinking it would be over in 10 minutes. Nothing public, nothing personal. But 2 days before the event, the principal called her into the office. "There's been a change," he said, fidgeting with his glasses. "The mayor's office heard about your work, the peer mentorship group, the safety audit, your article. They've asked if you'd be willing to say a few words at the community recognition event." Emma blinked. "The what?" It's on the town square. Saturday. Quite a crowd usually." She swallowed. "Why me?" He looked at her kindly. "Because your voice has already changed more lives than you know." She almost said no. But then she remembered Aisha's face, and the note in her locker, and the way Toby always leaned into her leg when she felt like she couldn't breathe. So she said yes. Saturday came fast. Emma stood behind the stage curtain, holding her speech in trembling hands. Toby sat beside her, calm and still, wearing his vest. From the other side of the curtain, she could hear the murmur of a crowd. Parents, teachers, reporters, even kids from school. Her name was called. She rolled forward. The lights were bright. The microphone loomed. But the faces in the crowd weren't strangers. They were neighbors, classmates, survivors. Emma unfolded her speech, looked down, looked up again. Then she set the paper aside. "I had something written," she began, voice soft but clear. "But I think I need to say something else." Silence fell. "I used to think courage was about doing things alone, surviving in silence. But I was wrong. Courage is letting people see your wounds. It's asking for help. It's choosing to speak when it's easier to disappear." She paused, her eyes finding Celia in the front row, Noah beside her. "I'm not brave because of what happened to me. I'm brave because I didn't let it define me." More silence, then applause. Not thunderous, not wild, but real. Afterward, people came up one by one, a teacher, a store owner, a student's mom, all thanking her. Emma smiled at each one, not because she needed their praise, but because, for once, she believed it. That night, she added a line to her journal. "Sometimes the loudest echoes come from the quietest voices." And hers had finally been heard. The envelope was thick, embossed, and official-looking. Emma almost thought it was another award at first, maybe from the school board or local government. She'd been getting a lot of those lately, but this one had a different weight to it, literally and emotionally. She sat at the kitchen table with Celia and Noah hovering nearby, and opened it slowly. The letter inside was crisp, the logo at the top unfamiliar. The Beacon Foundation. Emma read aloud. "Dear Emma Braxton, we at the Beacon Foundation have been following your advocacy work, particularly your leadership in creating safer school environments and supporting student survivors. We believe your voice is powerful and needed." Celia covered her mouth. Noah leaned closer. "We would like to formally invite you to join our National Youth Advisory Council. This role includes travel, collaboration with lawmakers, participation in youth-led reform panels, and shaping future survivor support programs across the country." Emma blinked. The rest of the letter detailed logistics, flights, stipends, optional speaking engagements. A mentor would be assigned. It was a 1-year commitment with the option to extend. "I don't understand," Emma said softly. "Why me?" Noah grinned. "Why not you?" Celia squeezed her shoulder. "Emma, they're not just offering you a seat at the table. They're giving you the chance to help build it." But Emma hesitated. "It's a lot. Leaving town, New faces flying, speaking, again. "You don't have to decide tonight," Celia said gently, "but promise me you'll think about what it could mean." That night, Emma sat on her bed with Toby beside her. She opened her journal, staring at a blank page. This wasn't like the speech. It wasn't about reflection anymore. This was future. She made 2 columns. Stay. Routine, comfort, safety, Toby's park, Celia's hugs. Go. Impact, growth, fear, challenge, flight. She stared at the list. Then she picked up her pen and wrote across both columns in bold, "I didn't survive to stay small." And just like that, her answer was clear. The next morning, she emailed the Beacon Foundation. "Thank you for seeing me. I'm ready to be seen by more." And when she hit send, her hands weren't shaking. They were steady. Because maybe courage wasn't just surviving darkness. Maybe it was choosing to step into the light, even when it blinds you at first. The suitcase lay open on her bed, half packed, half messy. Emma sat beside it, folding a sweater for the 3rd time, just to keep her hands busy. Toby watched from the floor, tail flicking softly. He knew something was changing. Dogs always do. Her flight to the Beacon Foundation's first summit was in 2 days. It would be her first time on a plane, first time leaving the state, first time speaking to people she'd never met. Not just as Emma the survivor, but Emma the advocate. And yet, all she could think about was whether to bring her blue hoodie or the one with the little stitched fox. Noah knocked lightly before entering. "Still not packed?" he said, raising an eyebrow. "I'm packed. Mostly," Emma mumbled. He sat down beside her and handed over a small box. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside was a simple silver bracelet, engraved with 3 words. "Still. Here. Always." Emma stared. "I had it made," Noah said, rubbing the back of his neck. "So you remember, even when you're surrounded by strangers, even when it's hard, you're never alone." Her throat tightened. "Thank you," she whispered. That evening, Celia made her favorite dinner, grilled cheese with tomato soup, extra crispy on the edges. The 3 of them sat at the kitchen table like it was any other night. Except it wasn't. "You're going to do so well," Celia said, voice just a little too cheerful. Emma didn't answer right away. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. Celia smiled, gentle and proud. "That just means it matters." Later, Emma stood in the doorway of her room, suitcase finally zipped. She looked around, at the bookshelf full of dog-eared journals, the faded posters, the window with stickers that hadn't peeled properly since 6th grade. This was her sanctuary, her chrysalis, and tomorrow she'd leave it behind. Toby nudged her leg, as if to say, "We got this." She leaned down, pressed her forehead to his. "Not leaving you, buddy," she whispered. "You're coming too." She picked up her phone and opened her notes app. A new entry. Day 1, not the end. Just the beginning of my voice reaching farther. Then she climbed into bed and stared at the ceiling, not counting scars or regrets, but stars. Because this time, she wasn't running from the past. She was walking toward the future, one step, one voice, one packed suitcase at a time. The city buzzed, not with danger, but with movement, with light, with stories. Emma had never seen buildings so tall, people so hurried, or air so alive. The ride from the airport felt like flying through a dream, made of glass and sound. She gripped Toby's leash tighter. He stayed close, head high, steps sure. The Beacon Foundation had booked her a room in a hotel that overlooked a park. The windows stretched from floor to ceiling. At night, the skyline shimmered like a galaxy turned sideways. But Emma barely noticed it. She was too busy memorizing her speech, her schedule, the way her stomach wouldn't settle. On the first morning, she rode the elevator down to the conference floor, with Toby at her side. Her badge read, Emma Braxton, Youth advocate. That word, advocate, still felt like a costume, until she walked into the conference room. It was full of teenagers, not just any teens, survivors. Some wore suits, others wore hoodies. A few had guide dogs like Toby. A girl in the corner had a scar down her left cheek and held her speech like a shield. Emma froze. A boy with a lanyard labeled Luis Chicago waved her over. "You knew?" he asked. Emma nodded. Luis grinned. "Everyone's new until you speak." Emma cracked a smile. "Then I guess I'll stay new forever." "Nope," he said. "You're already in it now." The first session was raw, a panel discussion led by survivors for survivors. They talked about healing, about fear, about what they lost, and what they built in the rubble. A girl named Priya shared how she'd rebuilt her life through poetry after her trauma. A boy named Jaden spoke about starting a hotline in his rural town, where no one believed him at first. Each story chipped away at something cold in Emma's chest. Not her fear, her loneliness. During lunch, she found herself at a table with 5 others. They didn't ask for her story. They didn't demand details. They just sat, ate, laughed softly, swapped stickers on their name tags. One girl passed her a note. "You don't owe anyone your pain to be powerful." Emma looked at her. "Did you write this?" The girl nodded. "It's true, isn't it?" Emma held onto the note like it was armor. That night, she stood by the window, Toby curled up nearby. She opened her journal and wrote, "Survivor wasn't supposed to be a community, but somehow, it's the strongest one I've ever known." She looked out at the lights again. This time, they didn't feel far away. The room was silent, but not empty. Polished floors, tall wooden walls, a row of government officials sitting behind a long bench, their expressions unreadable. Emma sat with her hands folded on the table, the microphone inches from her mouth. A tiny nameplate in front of her read, "Emma Braxton, Youth Advocate, Beacon Foundation." To her right, Priya sat calm, but alert. On her left, Jaden tapped his leg nervously. They were both set to speak too, but Emma was first. The Congressional Youth Safety hearing was not what she imagined. No warmth, no applause. Just time limits, microphones, and the click of pens on paper. One senator adjusted his glasses and said, "Miss Braxton, you may begin." Emma's heart thundered. She thought about her speech, memorized and rewritten a dozen times. But when she opened her mouth, none of it came out. Instead, she said, "I wasn't supposed to be here." The room shifted. "I don't mean this building. I mean here, alive, stable, speaking. There were days I thought silence would be easier. Days when I wanted to disappear completely." She looked up. Faces stared back. But now, some brows were furrowed. A pen stopped moving. I was bullied. I was cornered in bathrooms, ignored by teachers, laughed at in hallways. No one listened until it was almost too late. And I am one of the lucky ones. A pause. My school now has better systems, safer spaces, but not because the rules changed, because we changed them. She glanced at Priya, at Jaden. At this table are not victims. We are survivors, fighters, and architects of a world we were told we didn't belong in. More silence. Emma's voice steadied. "We don't need pity. We need policy. We don't need your sympathy. We need your signatures on reforms, on funding, on real enforceable change." She leaned in. "If you truly want to protect the next generation, then don't listen to us out of courtesy. Listen, because your silence costs lives." She stopped. The room held its breath. Then a woman in a gray blazer whispered something to the senator beside her. Someone else nodded. Emma sat back, not triumphant, but hurt. After the hearing, Priya grabbed her hand. "You killed it." Emma smiled faintly. Number I just told the truth, Jaden added, and they finally had to sit through it. That night, Emma didn't write in her journal. She didn't need to. Because for the first time, her truth wasn't just written in ink. It was etched into history. The train slid into the station with a low screech. Emma stepped off, suitcase rolling behind her, Toby trotting at her side in his vest. The platform was almost empty, just a soft breeze, familiar rusted signs, and the quiet hum of her own breath. She hadn't been gone long, 2 weeks maybe, but the weight in her chest told her something had shifted. As she exited the station, she spotted Noah's car idling at the curb. He leaned out the window, grinning. "You look taller," he said as she climbed in. "I feel heavier," Emma replied, but in a good way. At home, Celia had made chocolate chip muffins, the lopsided kind that Emma secretly preferred. There was a small welcome back sign on the fridge, written in blue marker with uneven letters. "Wasn't sure if it was too much," Celia said, wiping her hands. "It's perfect," Emma smiled. That night, she sat on the porch with Toby curled beside her, the stars above blinking, like familiar old friends. The air smelled like lilacs and distant barbecue, but even with all the comfort, her mind kept drifting. Emails from the Beacon team were already flooding in, updates from other cities, youth councils forming in 5 new states, her speech being quoted in advocacy newsletters. And then, something unexpected. The principal of her school had forwarded her a message. "Dear Ms. Braxton, following your testimony, our district has been selected for a pilot program focused on student safety and trauma-informed teaching. We would be honored if you'd join the advisory board." Emma read it twice, then a third time. She looked out at the quiet street, the same one where she once walked with her head down. No longer. The next morning, she returned to campus for the first time since the hearing. Kids in the hallway stared, whispered, but not with mockery, with respect. A freshman girl slipped a folded note into Emma's locker. "Because of you, I asked for help." "Thank you." Emma stood still for a long moment, eyes damp. In the afternoon, she sat down with the principal, the counselor, and a few student reps. They listened when she spoke, took notes, asked questions. Her ideas weren't just heard, they were implemented. That evening, she updated her journal. "I left to find my voice. I came back to use it." The final page of the notebook was now filled. She closed it, then opened a new one. Because some stories don't end. They evolve. A year later, Emma stood at the front of an auditorium, not as a guest, not as a student, but as the keynote speaker. The banner above her read, "National Youth Safety Summit, From Surviving to Leading." The room was packed, over 200 students, teachers, advocates, lawmakers, and somewhere in the back, she knew Noah and Celia were watching, just like they always did. Quietly proud. She took a breath and began. "A year ago, I stood in front of a microphone and said I wasn't supposed to be here. But I've come to realize that I was always meant to be here, just not in the way the world expected." The audience leaned in. "We're told that survivors are fragile, that we should be grateful we made it, that we should sit quietly while others fix what broke us. But I've learned that surviving isn't the end of the story. It's the foundation. And what you build on that foundation, that's power." She looked out at the crowd, a sea of faces with stories behind every eye. Don't wait for permission to speak. Don't wait for someone else to decide your pain matters. Use it, shape it, build something louder than silence. Applause erupted. But Emma didn't smile for the noise. She smiled because she meant it. Afterward, students swarmed her with hugs, selfies, and questions. A boy handed her a notebook, asking for her to sign the first page. A girl showed her a tattoo of a phrase Emma once wrote, "Still, here, always." She went back to her hotel room that night, with Toby asleep beside her and her phone buzzing nonstop. But instead of replying, she turned it off and opened a new journal. On the first page, she wrote, "This is not a survival story anymore. This is a leadership story, and I'm just getting started." Back in her hometown, policies she helped shape were now part of classrooms. Counseling offices were fuller, not from crisis but from conversation. Teachers were trained. Students knew their rights. The silence was broken. Noah was applying to college, majoring in social work. Celia had joined a local board for mental health advocacy. And Emma? Emma was planning something bigger, a podcast, a book, maybe even a nonprofit, because the world didn't just need her story. It needed thousands like hers, lifted up, believed, and heard. On her final night at the summit, she stood outside under the stars, Toby sitting tall at her feet. She whispered to the sky, not in prayer, but in promise. "I survived to speak. I speak so others survive, and we will never be silent again." And somewhere far off, the echo began.